on All In.
The Trump administration has engaged in a number of brazenly undemocratic and illegal actions, and they are losing in court.
American courts versus an out-of-control president.
Will you abide by that ruling? Will you comply?
Well, I always abide by the courts, and then I'll have to appeal it.
Tonight, another major loss for Trump in appeals court as he and the Doge King face public scrutiny.
I fully expect to be scrutinized and get a daily proctology exam, basically.
Then, stunning new whistleblower claims that Kash Patel is directing an FBI purge as a private citizen.
If these allegations are true, then Mr. Patel may have committed perjury before the Senate Judiciary Committee.
Plus, the growing controversy over the mayor of New York's get-out-of-jail-free card from the president. And new shockwaves in the Middle East after Trump's latest Gaza claims.
But we're going to take it, we're going to hold it, we're going to cherish it.
When All In starts right now. Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Elon Musk and his co-president Donald Trump have spent the first 3 weeks of their presidency attempting a full assault on the separated powers of the Constitution. Full stop. Now, they've done this despite controlling Congress, both houses, Senate and House, and the Supreme Court along with the White House. Think about that for a second. You come in, you've got the rare trifecta, but Trump and Musk are not passing any bills to accomplish their goals. Instead, an unelected billionaire is basically working unilaterally to dismantle the federal government with zero transparency, zero disclosures of conflicts of interest. And he's causing profound material harm and damage here in the U.S. and across the world as he does it. To that end, the two men held a deeply strange publicity stunt in the Oval Office today. Musk was there to defend his work against what has been something of a PR disaster out of the gate. Trump signed yet another executive order, this time granting Musk and his staffers further authority to slash the federal workforce and remake the government in Musk's image.
At a high level, you say, what is the goal of Doge, and I think a significant part of the presidency is to restore democracy. If there's not a good feedback loop from the people to the government, and if you have rule of the bureaucrat, if the bureaucracy is in charge, and then what meaning does democracy actually have?
You've received billions of dollars in federal contracts when it comes to the Pentagon, for instance, which the president, I know, has directed you to look into.
Yeah.
Are you policing yourself in that? Is there any sort of accountability check and balance in place that would provide any transparency for the American people?
Well, all of our actions are fully public.
Mr. Musk, you said on X that an example of the fraud that you have cited was $50 million of condoms was sent to Gaza. But after fact-check this, apparently Gaza in Mozambique, and the program was to protect them against HIV. So can you correct the statements? It wasn't sent to Hamas, actually. It was sent to Mozambique, which makes sense why condoms was sent there.
Yeah.
And how can we make sure that all the statements that you said were correct, so we can trust what you say?
Well, first of all, some of the things that I say will be incorrect and should be corrected. So nobody's going to bat 1,000. I mean, we will make mistakes, but we'll act quickly to correct any mistakes. I'm not sure we should be sending $50 million worth of condoms to anywhere, frankly.
Well, no one asked you, is the thing, actually, like where we should be spending our money. Actually, because there is democratic accountability, we elect people, members of Congress, in the House and Senate, and the president to come up with a funding package like the one they passed in December. And point of fact on the public disclosures, none of it's been public as far as I know. Most of what we know about Doge has come from independent reporters that Elon Musk has essentially threatened with criminal prosecution for doing their reporting. Nobody voted for Elon Musk to run the government. To that point, Trump addressed why Congress, which again, I can't stress this enough, his party controls, doesn't just pass laws to accomplish what he wants.
If I need a vote of Congress to find fraud and abuse, it's fine with me. I think we'll get the vote, although there'll be some people that wouldn't vote. And how could a judge want to hold us back from finding all of this fraud and finding all of this incompetence? Why would that happen? Why would even Congress want to do that? Now, Congress, if we do need a vote, I think we'd get a very easy vote.
A lot to say about his sort of disinterested, sort of observer to his own presidency posture here. But did you notice what he slipped in there about judges? Trump actually took a couple shots at the federal judiciary today, and while he claimed he would abide by any ruling against him, his remarks did not inspire a lot of confidence.
It seems hard to believe that judges want to try and stop us from looking for corruption, especially when we found hundreds of millions of dollars worth, much more than that, in just a short period of time. We want to weed out the corruption, and it seems hard to believe that a judge could say, we don't want you to do that. Well, so maybe we have to look at the judges, because that's a very serious, I think it's a very serious violation.
If a judge does block one of your policies, part of your agenda, will you abide by that ruling? Will you comply?
Well, I always abide by the courts, and then I'll have to appeal it. But then what he's done is he slowed down the momentum, and he gives crooked people more time to cover up the books. The answer is, I always abide by the courts, always abide by them, and will appeal. But appeals take a long time, and I would hope that a judge, if you go into a judge and you show him, here's a corrupt situation, we have a check to be sent, but we found it to be corrupt. Do you want us to send this corrupt check to a person, or do you want us not to give it and give it back to the taxpayer? I would hope a judge would say, don't send it, give it back to the taxpayer.
But what's the corruption exactly you're talking about? Like the condoms, 50 million condoms that were going to Gaza, we should be trust as corrupt, even though it wasn't $50 million condoms going to Gaza. I mean, to be clear, it's no small task to get a federal court to block actions from the sitting president. You have to go to court, make an argument, win over judges of all ideological stripes appointed by presidents from Ronald Reagan to Joe Biden to Trump himself. And yet time and time again, judges have found what Musk and Trump are doing to be so plausibly illegal and facially reckless that they have taken the rather significant step of telling him to stop while the courts take more time to figure out just exactly what's happening here and if it conforms with the law. In fact, 3 separate federal judges have ruled against Trump's executive order attempting to end birthright citizenship, written into the Constitution in the plain text, including just yesterday by a judge appointed by George W. Bush, and last week by a judge appointed by Ronald Reagan, who declared from the bench, it has become ever more apparent that to our president, the rule of law is but an impediment to his policy goals. The rule of law is, according to him, something to navigate around or simply ignore, whether that be for political or personal gain. Nevertheless, in this courtroom and under my watch, the rule of law is a bright beacon which I intend to follow. Similarly, judges have paused Trump's attempts to buy out federal workers with that random fork in the road email backed by no law from Congress and no actual guarantees they'll get what they want. The attempts to cut medical research grants in Alzheimer's, cancer, and other treatments, including basically laying waste to all of American science and biomedical research. To delete government websites from federal health agencies, to fire top government ethics watchdogs, to put thousands of USAID workers on leave, to freeze large, indeed enormous swaths of constitutionally appropriated federal funding. On that last point, a judge again condemned Trump this week for not complying with that order. Again, that sort of gets the problem here. Trump says he will abide by the judges. How much we believe him, I don't know. He's not exactly acting like it. I mean, even after that judge took Trump to task for defying his order yesterday, one of Trump's officials at FEMA ignored the judge and demanded a freeze in grant funding anyway. We've got the memo, NBC News, great reporting. As we like to say on the show, the future's unwritten. Maybe Trump's going to be good to his word. He will abide by all future court orders. That said, what Trump said today is worth contrasting with what his inner circle have been talking about for a while, which is ignoring the courts. I mean, Trump's own vice president has been advocating for doing that since 2021.
I think that what Trump should do, like if I was giving him one piece of advice, fire every single mid-level bureaucrat, every civil servant in the administrative state, replace them with our people. And when the courts, because you will get taken to court, and then when the courts stop you, stand before the country like Andrew Jackson did and say the Chief Justice has made his ruling, now let him enforce it.
So they haven't been shy on this. By the way, you think it's a good idea to fire, every air traffic controller in the country right now? Over the weekend, Vance again said judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power. Trump himself has mused publicly about a diminished judicial oversight of his presidency, including during an interview yesterday.
It's going to be dramatic, and it's a shame what's happening, Mark. It's really a shame, but judges should be ruling. They shouldn't be dictating what you're supposed to be doing.
There's some debates unfolding right now about what exactly would qualify as a constitutional crisis. Are we in one? Seems to me we've been one for a long time, certainly since the aftermath of the 2020 election. But the core issue is that Musk and Trump are acting as if they hold absolute power, even though they do not. That's the source of the crisis. They are, in that sense, bluffing, but it's a bluff they want to turn into a new reality, one that destroys the American constitutional order in favor of a corrupt strongman and a rule by a little clique of oligarchs. What Trump wants to do is to rule us, not represent us. But the people he does, in fact, represent, the hundreds of millions of us, are going to have something to say about that. Andrea Campbell, as Massachusetts Attorney General, has been challenging Trump's unlawful actions in court. She led more than 20 states in suing the Trump administration over research funding cuts. And with hours, a federal judge issued a temporary block on those cuts, and she joins me now. It's good to have you, Attorney General. First of all, when your office is looking, I know you're a party to a number of these cases. When your office has sort of looked at the executive orders and then the actions, and you're deciding, like, do we think this is legal? Has it been a close call? Has it been something where it just seems facially illegal to you? Has it felt unprecedented? Like, where do these actions rank from your standpoint in terms of the legal analysis?
First, thank you for having me. And I would say, as we continue to review not only the executive orders he signed on day one, but the flurry of policy changes that continue to come, most of what we are challenging in court, we reviewed deeply and thoughtfully and thoroughly and found them to be blatantly unconstitutional. So whether or not in the birthright context, the recent attempt to freeze federal funding, the NIH funding, which amounts to close to $40 billion funding institutions all across our country to advance medical research, to save and extend lives. Courts have sided with us in numerous cases to say these actions are not only unconstitutional, but that the president does not have the authority via an executive order or a Sharpie to rewrite the Constitution. And that he can pursue, as I do as Attorney General of Massachusetts every day, lawful policies, advance an agenda, including one around affordability, expanding access to health care, reducing prices. All of these things you can do lawfully. But sadly, he has continued to demonstrate that he does not want to do that and has a disregard for the rule of law, which is really unfortunate.
One of the cases, which is this, the funding freeze that was directed by this memo that went out, which caused absolute havoc, which is being evaluated in multiple jurisdictions, we should note. They tried to appeal this temporary restraining order basically by a lower court judge saying you have to stop the freeze, you got to let the money flow. A federal appeals court refused to grant the Trump administration a sort of stay on the stay, right, to let the freeze get back into effect today. Was it encouraging to you that when this got up to an appellate level, the plaintiffs also won, suggesting that even at an appellate level, there's strong legal foundation to oppose what they want to do?
I have been really heartened by the judges all across this country. And as you remarked in your introduction, these are judges appointed by both Democrat and Republican presidents. These are judges who take their job seriously. Their job is to uphold the Constitution. And not only that, to look at all of our arguments on either side of the table and to make a ruling. And they have done that thoughtfully and made it crystal clear that not only does the Trump administration continue to violate the law, but even when we have gone back into court, Democratic AGs, to defend a judge's decision, to force them to comply, for example, with a temporary restraining order when it comes to federal funding, and not to freeze those funds, we're going back into court to defend that. And judges, of course, are standing with us because what they recognize to be true, and I think every person, regardless of their party affiliation, should care, is that our Constitution is a contract. We are promised benefits and privileges, all of the rights we probably at times take for granted. These are guaranteed, and if this gets unraveled by one man, we're in trouble. So our jobs as AG is to protect our constituents and, of course, our economy.
Final question for you on that lawsuit that you mentioned before, because I just think this hasn't quite sunk in. The administration promulgated a universal and unilateral change to the funding structure of grants. It would amount to, I think you said, about a $40 billion cut that would affect institutions, research facilities, people working on research everywhere from Utah to Alabama to Massachusetts. That has been frozen. What, in terms of what the effect of that would be on American research and American ingenuity, innovation, like what's your understanding from working on this case?
It would be total devastation. Lives would be lost, and folks seeking care to cure, to address cancer, both adult and pediatric cancer, PTSD, our elders dealing with dementia, you name it. The NIH is the largest funder of biomedical research in the world, close to $40 billion. And this administration on a late Friday night decided with no thoughtfulness to quickly cut a portion of that funding, billions of dollars, which would affect academic research institutions and research institutions of all types all across this country. In a blue state or a red state, it doesn't matter. And not only not to do it thoughtfully, not to give any notice to those institutions, not to give them time to prepare. So I, along with 21 other AGs, stepped up, Democratic AGs, to go into court and to immediately file a lawsuit against the Trump administration for this. The judge, in 6 hours, came back with a temporary restraining order to say, you can't do this. And so we'll continue to fight, but everyone should care. Everyone has been connected with someone who has been diagnosed with a disease where this funding is critical to saving their lives or even their children.
Massachusetts Attorney General Andrea Campbell, thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Coming up, more on the Trump-Musk plan to circumvent American democracy next.
Tap into Etsy for original and affordable home and style pieces like lighting under $150 to